talk nepotism, shall we? It's in the headlines at the moment, basically, because the head of Dior has hired his daughter. It's got people talking about whether or not that's the right thing or not. Kevin, do you think it's a good thing to use your influence to shoe on your kids into the roles?
Do you know what? There's almost something I want to say, which is the right sounding thing, but then I have to pinch myself and just tell the truth. And I think nepotism, as I understand it, is something that I would pursue, that I would do. For example, if it was my son and I had the chance to get him into a particular career job that I was involved in, I would do it. And I suppose that they would call that nepotism. You know, before I became a teacher, you know, I'm an electrician by trade.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm an electrician by trade. So when I was a young lad working on the building sites as an apprentice, what was really interesting, all the apprentices that would come in were the sons of the fellows that were already working, the carpenters and the sparks and the plumbers, heating engineers and brickies, etc. And that was just, I never seen a problem with that in the slightest, right? But this is where I get like a little bit unsure about things. Sometimes you hear the argument now that in certain jobs and careers, maybe perhaps a lot of like black people or young working class people can't get their foot in the door of certain careers in the City of London in the past or whatever. And if you look after your own sort of family, you're maybe precluding those people from getting a chance to get up the ladder and have a fair crack at the whip. So even though I've just told you that I think I would pursue and accept a bit of nepotism and I would do it myself and my family, I do understand in certain circumstances it can perhaps be anti-meritocratic. So I'm trying to be as honest as possible and give you my answer, Michelle.
Well, I respect that. Daniel?
Generally, I'd be strongly in favour of meritocratic appointments, but I think there are two things to say. The first is, in the case of this particular company, which is
Dior,
which is Dior, LMVA, which is the big brand, big company, it does actually belong to this guy. And when he dies, presumably it'll be inherited by his kids and his family. And I think it's perfectly okay if he says that they've got to have some experience with the business before they actually come to own it. So I think that's completely understandable. I think if it was a public company and you were just doing this, it would be much more difficult, it would be impossible to explain because you have responsibilities to broader shareholders and other stakeholders. But this guy, he's going to leave this company, presumably, to his kids. So they should know something about it. But the second is, I entirely agree with, I think it's very interesting, Kevin's point about the fact that in these in the building trades that he was talking about, fathers hand on skills to sons, and that's part of how things actually get done well.
And to the daughters.
That was very rare.
It was very rare, yeah.
Case. That would have been very rare.
Back then it was rare, Michelle.
That would have been very rare in Kevin, because Kevin's, you can just see him.
I'm not a spring chicken.
Yeah, you're not 21 anymore, right? Yeah, you've had
a bit of an antediluvian like myself. So that would have been rare. But it's also in other areas. So, for example, in music, like Johann Sebastian Bach, he had half a dozen kids. He trained them all to be musicians. They went on to be great musicians of the next generation. Mozart learned all his music from his father, who was a musician. This is what people were expected to do. If you had a skill, whether it was music, you try to hand it on, because it gives your family, it gives your own kids a chance to make a living.
Well,